Welcome back, everyone. We are here at GEF Live at the GEF Assembly in Viet Nam, and you're connected on the Connect for Climate Facebook page. This is the final day, and this is our final interview in a series that we've been having. And I could not have a better person to have this final conversation with. This is someone I'm very excited to talk to, Dr. Thomas Lovejoy. He has coined the term biodiversity. He has developed the idea of a debt for nature swap and is widely known as the Godfather for biodiversity. So thank you so much for being with us today.
Well, great to be here.
So I'm sure there are many people online who are excited about having your voice contribute to this series that we've been having. And many of them may already be in love with conservation, be very vested. But to those that we have not converted yet, I want to ask the question, why biodiversity? Why should we care when there's so many other development challenges out there? And what's the role of biodiversity in addressing the climate agenda and the issues that we're facing?
So the simple answer is, of course, we're biological. So we can't exist independent of other biological resources. And so that's, our daily food, our shelter, our clothing, all kinds of things come from that. But then a lot of things we don't think about. Where does our medicine come from? How does nature sort of modify the climate and keep, things at a habitable temperature? And that's just scratching the surface. And in fact, because we're still exploring biological diversity, there are just an unbelievable number of benefits that we will uncover in the course of exploring the wonders of life on Earth.
And you are a biologist, so you first encountered the Amazon when you were a graduate student at Yale, right?
That's right.
And how has that changed over the years? I'm assuming you've gone back to the rainforest, and the conversations then are different than the ones now, and I'm sure the drivers can potentially be different as the ones now. So what's your perspective?
Yeah, so I'm always on my way to the Amazon, right? I'll be there in another 10 days.
Oh, wow.
So when I first went, it was 97% intact, and it was the world's biggest wilderness and a biologist's dream. Right? And most people are more aware of deforestation and destruction of the Amazon than they know about the good side of the agenda. And more than half of the Amazon is under some form of protection that nobody would have ever dared dream possible. But because the Amazon makes half of its own rainfall, there comes a point where too much deforestation could actually cause it to dry out, a tipping point. And that's not too far away. So I and the most famous climate scientist of South America, Carlos Nobre, have sent out a warning about that. The good news is you can actually do reforestation and build back a margin of safety.
Yeah.
So it's like many of these environmental problems, if you actually face them and grapple with them and are imaginative, you can solve them before they bite you.
And that is an incredible amount of destruction and changes in that time, but we do want to focus on solutions. So restoration, ecological restoration, has really rose up in I think, the conversation. We're seeing new political commitments around it, a lot of new hectares that are committed to, but we're not necessarily there when it comes to action. What is your perspective on the role that restoration plays in both biodiversity and then the broader objectives that we want to see happen in the development?
So, restoration has always made sense. I mean, it's restoring the productivity of whatever particular piece of the planet we're talking about. It has extraordinary additional importance today as we confront the climate change challenge. And I think the reality is we have to stop at 1.5 degrees if we want to have a biologically manageable planet. And you look at all the current trends, and there's absolutely no way we could do that, except turns out there are new numbers on how much carbon is in the atmosphere from modern day destruction and degradation of ecosystems. And it's a really big number. It's essentially the same as remains intact in existing ecosystems. So ecosystem restoration literally is possible on a scale where you could pull tens of parts per million of carbon back out of the atmosphere. And the reality is, begin to actually understand that this planet works as a linked physical and biological system, and that we should respect that and manage it that way.
Yeah, systems thinking has come out as a message, as well as the landscapes approach, and understanding the many demands we have on land, and how it's not necessarily always going to be this protected area, but restoration in a broader sense that is inclusive of maybe our societal visions for what we have moving forward. Do you feel like we are getting close to entering the age of restoration that you want to see?
I think literally we are at the threshold of the age of restoration, and that there's going to be a moment within just the next couple years where that begins to take hold. And one of the things I really like about that, other than solving this terrible climate challenge, is that once people begin to understand the planet just doesn't work as a physical system, but it's also got this linked biological part, it will actually alter people's perception of where we fit in nature, and that we actually need nature, and we should embrace it, enjoy it, exult in it, and live in harmony with it.
Yeah, I've been seeing the Conservation International's videos on nature doesn't need us, we need nature, and such powerful messages coming out that I think we need to listen to very soon.
Well, it's really interesting. So you go way back to the early history of life on Earth, when it was only blue-green bacteria, and there was only 2% of the atmosphere was oxygen, and they were pumping out all this oxygen, and at first it was sort of grabbed by iron, but when the oceans ran out of iron, the oxygen began to accumulate in the atmosphere, ultimately getting to 20%. And it made the blue-green bacteria marginal because that was a toxic waste substance to them. So there's an important sort of parable in that, because we could be doing the same thing if we don't stop and understand what we're doing, except that we're doing it with CO2.
And you've committed your career to this in your studies, and started off with WWF, I believe is employee number
13.
13. So it's amazing, because we had an interview earlier with the Chief Conservation Officer, and this has blown up. But you had experience early on in a smaller team and in shaping something and charting out a new path. I think for young people right now, it sometimes takes that type of work and effort. You may not be joining these development organizations, you may be in a startup. What advice do you have to young people who are on the cusp of wanting to start their own new path, and what was really useful for you?
I would say it doesn't matter hugely where you start. Just get a start somewhere. Get to be a known person instead of a CV, right? And literally, my students are sometimes shocked when I tell them I made it up as I went, right? But a lot of life is about that. And as long as you sort of have a sense of what you want to do in the world, there's going to be just tremendous opportunity. And we need every single one of those young people to be exploiting that and pushing that as much as they can.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Thank you so much for having this conversation with us. Very much appreciated it. I think it gave us a new perspective on the hope that we have moving forward, the change that we've seen in the past years, both good and bad, and how we should look at our future. So thank you for having this conversation with me. And thank you everyone for watching for the past 3 days. We've had a great time sharing information with you on the Connect for Climate Facebook page here at GEF Live. We hope to see you soon.
Great.